right, welcome back in, everybody. 5 minutes with Sean, maybe 10. We're back into our sit down edition. And this week we're gonna have some fun, do something a little different. I've been I've known Mike for a long time. We just haven't been able to connect on this level, so I'm really excited to have him here. Mike Correra, Dealer Built Account Manager. Mike, how are you today, man?
I'm great, Sean. Thank you so much for having me on, man.
Oh, you're wonderful. You're welcome, and thank you for being on. I always tell that to people. I always find it interesting when people agree. You know, people watch the show, and then when they agree to be on, it's really, for me, it's wonderful. All right, so as everyone knows, this year we're taking a little bit different twist on the sit down edition. We're having the guest bring the topic. As everyone also knows, this is not a bit. I do not know the topic. Mike has not presented it to me at all in any way. So with that in mind, Mike, what are we going to be talking about today, man?
I wanted to talk about technology and the service drive. And I know it's a subject that's getting a lot of attention in a lot of different places, but I wanted to kind of put a different spin on it. We tend to talk about it from the consumer side and even from the service writer, service manager side, but I really wanted to kind of get into the technician side. And the reason is, if I back up a little bit, 35 years ago now, I'm dating myself, but I started in the car business as a tune-up and drivability technician at a Ford and Isuzu store. So I was a tech for quite a few years. And then I put my tools away, put a tie on, and obviously it went downhill from there. But the bottom line is, when I look at technology in the service drive, I always think about how much better my life would have been had I had these tools that they have available now. For instance, you probably won't remember, but in the 80s, Ford made a small sedan called a Ford Tempo.
And it absolutely remember. Absolutely. A good Tempo trade in the front door in the late 90s meant you were ready to buy a car, Mike. Okay, exactly. So you always welcome a good Tempo trade when I started selling in the late 90s.
That was a deal. Guy pulled in with the Tempo, done deal.
Yep.
The Tempo, it had a problem in its ignition system. As Ford was transitioning from the old school points and condenser to what we have now, distributorless ignition, there was a lot of phases in between that weren't necessarily great. And the Tempo had a known problem with a component in the distributor called a stator, right? And every time I'd get a Tempo in my stall as a tune-up technician for a minor tune or anything else, the first thing I'd do is pop the distributor cap, take my little pocket screwdriver out of my pocket and kind of depress it on that stator. And if it was soft, it was going to be going bad. Okay. So that meant I had to take the paper RO, the repair order, walk over to the parts department, walk in the back counter, see Gene, the parts guy, ask him if we had a stator and module in stock. He'd write it down for me. Yes, it's in stock. Here's how much it is. Then I had to walk over to the service advisor. Hopefully he wasn't out in the drive with a customer. Or if he was, I had to wait for him. And then I'd say, hey, I need you to call this customer and get authorization because this needs a stator module. So then I'd be standing there waiting. Most of the time, as we all know, even back then, people had answer machines. He'd call and he'd leave a voicemail. Hey, folks, got some stuff I'd like to go over with you on your car. If you could get back to me, I would sure appreciate it. Well, now I'm stuck. I'm on what's called authorization hold. So I had to go over to the dispatcher, and she wasn't always the nicest lady in the whole wide world. And, I was the youngest guy at the dealership by like 40 years at the time as a 19-year-old punk technician. So I didn't always get the real good gravy customer pay work. I'd have to stand around and wait for some warranty or something to come in, or maybe a recall or something. So this was all downtime for me. And even though at the time I was flagging in an 80-hour pay period, I was flagging 160 hours, 180 hours. I mean, I was quick, I was good, I was efficient, but there was a lot of downtime in that. Now, fast forward to that same type of situation with the technology that's available from companies like Update Promise or True Video or any one of the other companies that are helping out service departments. A technician stops, he sees something that the customer needs to know about that could benefit that customer in getting it done while it's already apart. In that whole process, he can take out his phone, make a quick video. Hey folks, this is Mike. I'm at ABC Motors. I'm taking care of your car today. While I was working on it, I noticed this component right here. It's going to be needing to be replaced really quickly. I could get it done today, right now, and have it done on the promise time that we talked about or you discussed with your service advisor if you let us know if you want to go ahead and get it done. He takes that, sends it to the parts department. The parts department notifies the service advisor that the technicians found something. They have the parts in stock. Here's how much it is. He electronically sends that to the advisor. Advisor gets it. He can forward that to the customer in a text. All of us can answer a text. If you're in a meeting, most of the time, I'm sure if your phone goes off, you'll at least kind of eyeball it out of the side of your eye, right? I do it all the time. Text messaging is efficient. It's a way to get the information to the customer immediately. So it eliminates all that standing around, all that inefficiency time. The technician is happy to find things that the customer could benefit from because it's income for him. Let's not kid ourselves. It's going to pay him more hours if he can find things that he can upsell. But the motivation is greater if you have a more efficient process that benefits the customer, the technician, the service advisor. There's no negative. It's a win for everybody. And I just
Mike, I completely agree, dude. Here's the thing. You just listening to you explain the process you went through. Look, granted, 40 years ago, fine, like whatever. We don't, it doesn't matter to me. Inefficient,
35,
inefficient,
not
right?
40.
All right, 35, 40, doesn't matter. 35, 40, 50 doesn't matter. My point is that the inefficiencies still probably exist. The things
Yes,
that
they
you
do.
dealt with 35 years ago are still probably things people deal with today. So when
And
I
that's why I
look at
wanted to say that. I'm in stores all the time. I was in a store last week that the technician is still bringing a paper repair order up to the service advisor. And I literally watched him wait for the service advisor to finish what he was doing in the service drive. He's just standing there waiting. That's
standing
that's
there,
downtime.
that's it. And that's what I'm saying. That downtime for me is about efficiency, right? If there's nothing we've learned over the last year in our business and in our lives, the time is what you have and you must maximize, you must be efficient. You talk about people talking about the idea of tech and service drives, right? And so I saw a post, you probably saw a post on LinkedIn recently. A service advisor of a big time Ford dealership out east was saying, hey, who are people using? What are people doing to use video in the service drive? And you mentioned a couple of the companies that were actually listed there, some of the text to drive people, my friends over at SnapCell, whatever it is. See, that's the thing. I don't really care what you use. Just use something and,
Right.
and, and commit to using it, because the way you describe the process now was the tech shoots the video. Let's start there. Mike, how realistic is it, man? Today's tech, is this something that they're going to fit into their process? Is this something that I'm have to account for and they're going to want to be paid for? Like, how do you see that part of it, looking at it from the outside, looking in, saying, yeah, we expect people to use these tools, but will they, and what will come with that?
Actually, that's a really good question because in my capacity, I have been involved with the training and the implementation of technology systems being rolled out at dealerships. And the key is the buy-in from the tech. You got to start with the technicians. And like you said, their question is going to be, am I being paid for this? Yes, you are. If you can get more jobs done in a quicker time, your flat rates are going to go up. You're going to make more money. That's the bottom line. Yes,
And if you
you are going
find
to get
problems
paid.
along the way, each ticket goes up, the cost of each RO is improved, et cetera, through time. But you know this because you've been in the car business long enough. That is a long-term value proposition to someone, right? They, in the short term, it's more work. Do you run up against that, Mike, with technicians where they're
No,
like, yeah, I see that, or they see that, and they go, yeah, I get it.
most of the time, as soon as we start explaining it, the technicians, just like you, see it from a different, they're living it all day long. This is their
Right.
life. They know the life of getting an approval and the hassle it takes. So as soon as you start saying that you're going to eliminate that for them, you don't got to leave your bay, sir. You can take a quick video, send it out to Parts. Parts is going to tag the availability and price to it and send it to the service advisor. And meanwhile, you can keep working. Then the service
Now,
advisor is going to let you know, hey, I've got the approval on this. Now you walk over to the parts department. The parts are sitting on the back counter ready for you. You're not standing waiting. You grab the parts, you go back to work. Now, instead of putting a car back together and then getting it out of your bay and getting another one in and then getting an approval, hey, that car that's out there in the parking lot, you can go ahead and pull it back in and take it all back apart again and finish that job. They start to see it. You can just see literally, it's beautiful to be involved with because you can see them making sense. They're like, oh,
it sounds
geez,
like it. It sounds like
it's
it
gonna be
because I'm
awesome.
hearing you say it, and I'm thinking to myself, if they did buy in immediately to the efficiency level, which I mean, that's all this is, right? It's making you more efficient, you the chance to make money. Is it fair to say though that all systems make it as easy as you make it sound, Mike? You make it sound like anyone they use in the space would, regardless of DMS, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of plugins. Is there any caveats to the way that you're kind of explaining this and going about it? Because it sounds so simple, but is that what you found regardless of the systems involved?
I've found that, yes. There's unique nuances on each system. And the car business is the car business. Everyone kind of uses things differently. It doesn't really matter as much how the system is designed to use, because each dealer, they all think they're smarter than the average bear. They're all going to adapt it to the way they do things. And oftentimes I have to be the one that's flexible when I'm in a dealership, because I'm trying to get them to do it this way. And they're like, no, that's not the way we want to do it. We see it being used like this. So I'm not going to fight with them. I'll just roll with it and go, all right, let's adapt it to that process. And what the system is, like you said, it doesn't matter the system as much as whether you're using the system. There are a number of great products out there, and most of them will do the things exactly in that process that I said. So
Well, then
they're
that's
all
amazing.
adaptable.
Then that
It's
technology
awesome.
has come a long way too. Then, Mike, even in the last 36 months, I would say, then that technology has come a long way. And I think we're finding that across the board. I think a lot of people start to look at the appointment setting process on the front end of a service drive, right? So when the consumer engagement even begins, trying to get themselves prepared for what potentially could be on that customer's list based on mileage, based on visits, based on this. So there's a lot of this sort of pre-planning where tools like this really play in. I make the joke all the time that when I was running stores, and customers would have a problem, they wouldn't believe the service advisor, or there was a transparency question or issue, dude, I probably would have been fined $1 million. I would walk people through let's go. I'm going to take you from here through and people would be like, Sean, you cannot take them into the shop. We have OSHA, we have this. I'm like, I don't care. This
Safety
guy's got
glasses.
the car on the track. I want to see it. I want them to see it. And I want to make it right. And so this does that with that part of it. So Mike, when you deal with the technician, where do you see the biggest not headache? Where's the biggest bottleneck right now when everyone starts to use the tech? Is it a technician? Is it an advisor? Is it parts? Where are you seeing the flow sort of still get paused up a little bit?
The flow tends to be at the advisor, because the advisor, a lot of folks don't realize how overwhelming it is to be a service advisor in the service drive. I've spent time, I started in the service department. Even when I went into sales, I got to know my advisors really, really well. I completely understand their position. I know I couldn't do it. To juggle that many balls in the air and know 16 different vehicles, where they're at in the process of being repaired, what parts are going out, what approvals need to be.
And
Service
then having
advisors
some of them pick
really
up phones, Mike, on top of that.
unsung
You got
hero.
them answering phones, setting their own appointments, dealing with, it's one thing if they're making outbound calls or a client calls in a request of their name. It's another if you got these guys setting appointments on your drive.
Yes.
Get an appointment setter. I think there's AI for that now. Like, just find a different way to get something off these people's plates. No one appears busier in a dealership than a service writer.
Right.
Not in my experience.
A lot of them are cashiering their own tickets, closing out. So
that's what I'm saying. There can't be, right? There has to be a process that says, yes, when you're settled, Mike will take care of you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Like, I pass it from Mike, and Mike rings him out. Mike, is that part of this issue, though, of efficiency? Is that all these separate bottlenecks and expectations we're putting on singular people? Is that part of the problem?
I would say definitely. And from a dealer standpoint, all he sees sometimes is cutting costs, cutting payroll, being able to consolidate positions, but that doesn't necessarily take into consideration the increased stress, anxiety, frustration levels. And if you don't have a happy team, man, you don't have an efficient team.
Well, let me say this, though, right? When people say that, because I hear that all the time in my life, right? Because I deal with vendors, dealers, that's our whole lot in life. I hear people say cutting costs, right? They say, Sean, how would I add a technology? It's going to add a cost. Well, if these 5 technicians became 10 hours more productive than we've paid for it, we've paid them and we've made additional money. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm not doing to cut costs. I might be adding them, but if we can, your bottlenecks sound so time consuming, Mike. They sound as time consuming as getting cars to the lot sometimes, right? Car comes off the carrier, got to go here, got to sit there, might have to go to prep. Then once it gets to prep, gets to the lot, you've been paying for the car for 2 weeks, it's not even on the front line, and that's what this feels like a little bit in the back bottleneck. How have you seen video sort of, what are the highlights for you when you see it in action? Because you're in stores, and I like that about your position. So walk me through sort of some of the things you're hearing from advisors and techs about the positive side of this whole thing.
The positives, I got a store I was at back in the Midwest. Their call volume dropped 60%. And that's a good thing. Some people think, well, they're not getting calls, they're not making calls. the reason their call volume dropped is because they didn't have to. They weren't calling the customer, leaving a voicemail, and then the customer calls back, and the service advisor isn't necessarily chained to his desk. He's out in the shop, he's out in the drive. The customer leaves a voicemail. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get that repair done, but the service advisor doesn't hear that voicemail until late in the afternoon. He's not able to get the job done. The customer shows up thinking, okay, I told him it can go ahead and finish the repair. Is my car all done? Well, we didn't get the authorization until 4 o'clock. So you're going to have to come back next week and we can get that done. No, I'll just stop at Jiffy Lube on the way home and get it done. Or this weekend, I'll take it to someplace else. All these things that come together. When you send either a text or a text with a video, transparency is gone. There's no issue with transparency because the customer doesn't have the capacity to say, I don't believe you. They see a set of brake pads that are down to metal. They're like, oh my God, I'm driving a car. Yeah, get it done.
There's nothing more powerful than the visual of it all. You know what I mean?
Nothing more powerful.
There isn't for me, and I've been fortunate. I haven't had major, huge repairs. People who watch my show know I have a prized Subaru, a 2007 Forester. I love with my life. I got it with 6 miles on it. It has 167,000 on it now. I've had one major repair, well, actually two, but one, the first one covered by Subaru. Second one, major repair. Huge bill, needs new heads. It's a big deal. The whole thing got done right here. The whole thing, except for the initial phone call, because just like anyone who wants to deliver you less than ideal news, I appreciate him calling me to say to me, hey, Sean, look, yeah, the check engine light is what we all feared it was. It's the heads. Here's the cost breakdown. Here's what it is, right? Because that probably would have been informal to get via text. I probably would have been like, well, I mean, okay, this sucks. At least he explained everything, went through why this is what else we're going to look at while we have it off, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm happy, right? There was no photos, though. There was no video. And Mike, I got to be honest with you, dude, I wish there was. Because about 4 months later, I go out to my garage to start said Subaru, all fixed and done. Go to start it. Mike, I don't even get a crank. I get nothing. I get zero. So I'm like, okay, yeah, dead battery, no big deal. So I get a tow to my local guy who wasn't the one who did the actual heads repair. Local guy says, hey, Sean, yeah, you should call Guinness Book. I said, why is that? He said, because your car has a battery, you have an original battery. You have a 2007 Subaru with an original battery. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how you're still driving. I don't know how it's even working. And I said, but wait a second. 4 months ago, these guys took my motor out. They took everything out of the thing. How did they miss this? And he said, well, if you would have been using our video technology, you would have, and I'm like, son of a bitch. There it was, like if they would have been using what he uses, right? They would have sent it to me, recommended it to me, gone through everything. And so there were different processes, same car, different processes. I appreciate everything being done by text. I just do. It's just easier. It's just easier. And you talk about, it's funny. So Mike, when someone says that, I'm sure you got like, oh my God, Mike, our call volume is down 60% in our service drive. What has transpired, right? When the reality is, did anyone look at the text indication? Is your text usage up 4,000%?
I shifted the focus by saying, how is your RO gross? Well, our RO gross is up 18%. Okay, so your car volume has dropped, and yet you're making more money per RO. So do you see the correlation there? Yeah. And the concern just kind of went away.
Yeah. So when you do this, you talk about buy-in from the technician. Does it start bigger than that, though? Do people
always starts
above
bigger than that
need to be the biggest buy-in?
The decisions are always made up top, and sometimes those decisions and the justification don't trickle down. A lot of times a GM will tell a service manager will be all excited about something, go see the GM and the dealer, and they'll make the decision, okay, we're going to invest in this technology. Then a team shows up to start training, and that's the day the service manager decides to include his team and say, okay, guys, you got to do this now. And when that happens, yes, you're going to get nothing but defensive attitude, resistance. Oh man, I'm so busy now. I don't have time to stop and hit my phone and do all this stuff. So
agreed. Mike, this seems easily curable. Why would this be still the case? This is simple one-on-one communication. Is it not? Am I missing something? I mean, if A agrees and B agrees, shouldn't we go tell C? If C is going to be the one to use it?
Correct.
Okay.
Ding, ding, ding. You're the winner.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I wasn't looking for anything, but
out into the world, though. We need to get these folks on the same page. So I always go out and start with the text and let them know, guys, I turned wrenches, maybe not as good as you. I don't know if I could do it these days, but I did what you did. I understand the frustrations. Here's how I see this benefiting you. And I'll share with them that same story. And it'll make people laugh, and it'll make people, and as we're talking, you can see the light bulb start to go on. Like, yeah, you know what? This can save me money or time, which
it can
is
save
money.
me time, which can make me more money, because in that world, that's all they got.
Right.
A tech can only monetize the hours in a day. He doesn't have anything else to do. He can't sell anything else to someone else during his work time. So that is the job. The job is selling and fixing, right? And the same thing happens with the advisor. The job is selling and organizing. So there are massive things that happen within a customer's journey into a place, right? Now I see service advisors that I deal with for my wife's car is at a Mercedes store. They all have tablets. They come in, they take pictures of the car, they do all these things. The picture of the car was great, dude, because during my service car wash, the front tow hook came off my Mercedes. So the panel, which is like a weird custom painted panel, which is like $300. And I said, look, go look at your pictures. Go look at your pictures. It was here when I gave it to you. And lo and behold, they're like, yep, first picture, there it was, but it wasn't here now. And they couldn't find it, so they had to replace it. But they had the evidence. We didn't have to argue. I didn't need them to goodwill me anything. They could have simply said to me, here's the video. It was not on here when you pulled this car in this morning. And I go, okay, my bad. Order me a new one. It's that part of it that is, I'm trying to think why people wouldn't use this. Mike, what are you hearing about why I shouldn't use this stuff?
Believe it or not, I still hear that wouldn't work at our dealership.
Oh, because that dealership's on Mars, and it services the rover, for God's sakes. It has nothing to do with actual cars with engines. Is that okay?
It really doesn't matter what process or system I'm talking about. There's always that one guy that'll say, oh, I know that probably works for some of the other dealers. And if I'm in a rural area, they'll say that works in the big city.
The city boys, the city guys can use that, yeah.
That works out in the country. That won't work at our dealership. And there's so much that I can't argue against that. That's just
the only thing I ever say is, you do have one of these, right? Like, this is still like you, and they all have it right like you did. Yeah, right here or right here. It's always really close, yet we got to be different. No, I have a couple of really great client partners who that's their belief. Their belief is, yes, maybe for you in those other places, but not here where we are and how we do things. Okay.
That wouldn't work with
like
our
you said
customer.
earlier, I'm not going to argue with you.
Right.
I'm certainly not going to, but if I think it's good for you, Mike, and you know this, I'm a dealer advocate like yourself. So if it's good for you, I'm probably not going to stop bringing it up.
I'm going to mention it all the time.
I'm going to pester the shit out of you. So
I like to send a text to a GM and then remind them, hey, you and I are communicating by text, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. It gets things done.
Send them a video.
Customers would probably be the same way because they're just humans like you and me. Yeah, but we're not ready to do that yet. Just
okay, and there it was, right? That's the therapy moment. It wasn't about if, it was about readiness. You are not ready to take the next steps. It's not that it will not work, because you have no idea. I've seen it work. I'm pretty sure it's going to work. But for you, the buffer excuse is, no, not in my market. The reality, what I'm actually saying to you is, I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to ask the service manager, to ask his technicians, to ask his parts manager. Have you ever met Gene? Okay, Gene's a pain in the ass. We're not going to ask parts to get involved in that. We don't want to deal with this. That is what's happening in these stores. And I struggle, man, because when I was helping run stores and being a part of that operation, if it came down from the people who ran the stores to do whatever it was to be said, that's what got done. The idea that now there's like this big negotiation process. I'm not saying not include people, because that's definitely screwed up. That's not what I mean. But as soon as we decide, as soon as we walk out of the room and the owner goes, yep, we're signing that product, and he's coming in on May 1st and it's March 1st, we're going right downstairs. We're getting everybody in the service advisor room together, and we're going to start with the advisors. And then we're going to talk to the techs, because there's two different utilizations of product, how they're going to do it, where they're going to do it. But Mike, do you see this sort of like optional behavior when you go to stores? Do half the techs get to, half the techs don't? Or is it 100% or nothing? Like, how do you see that?
The only way it works is when it's 100%. the ones that aren't able to get the buy-in from everybody, you know, the ones that just go out and go, hey guys, this is what we're doing. That's how it's going to be. And then they go back to their office. And then 3 months later, they're calling me up going, hey, you know, we're going to cancel this because I can't get everybody on board. But what do you mean you can't get everybody on board? It's not really an option. You're the manager. I mean, I'll be happy to come out and let's get everybody together and do some retraining. Maybe it's a, you know, a resistance because they're not comfortable with it. They don't feel like they can do it fast enough, or, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that could be causing the technicians to not adapt it. But
Sure.
it shouldn't just be an option. Like you said, you know, you don't get when I was a salesperson and when I was a technician, I didn't have a choice.
No.
You know, when I went up to,
it's like, I'm not a parent, Mike. Okay. So I don't have kids. My company is my kid. That's how I deal with it. Even my supervisor mentions like my kid. I don't have kids, but I observe people. That's my life. I love to observe. So I noticed this new trend while I'm in stores with like grocery stores where like parents are like sitting here asking 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, like, so what is it that you would like from this aisle? What are you going to eat later? What do you think about this? And I just, all the time, I immediately flash back to my childhood of just being dragged through grocery stores or put under the cart in the grocery store, shit being loaded on top, and then getting to the car being told to help put mom, you know, put bags in the car. That is how I remember my life as it relates to food.
And food being put on the table, regardless of your input. Here's your dinner. You got no choice.
And people say to me, Sean, when you have kids, well, guess what? I'm not gonna. So we can get rid of the when I'm gonna. I'm not gonna. So all I can do is observe. I know that there's nothing like being a parent, but from the observation side of things, there's way too many options, dude, that I did not have that I think cause a bunch of unnecessary pieces. So anyways, you and I agree that dealerships really need to have that top buy-in. But now you've subtly mentioned service managers as potential bottlenecks to this process. And I only say that because you said that ownership would approve. You said that the guys down here who have to use it don't hear about it. And then you said on training day, this guy here, he likes to go out and then go back to his office. What can you give me, or what can you say to service managers who might feel trepidation towards moving forward, the idea that they don't want to get involved? What advice would you give to people who aren't fully embracing this, that you have met along the way now, to the future selves of people who will be dealing with this?
The advice I give, because it's come up quite a bit, is again, I put it back on myself. When I was a sales manager for many years, I've been at many stores, and ownerships have changed systems, whether it's a DMS or a CRM system. And it's not as an enjoyable process to bring something new, a new system in, right? But my team, my sales team, is going to depend on me to have the answer. So if a sales guy comes up and says, hey, Mike, I can't put the customer's trade in the CRM. If I'm not fluid in the CRM and I can't show him how to do it, and I just tell him, well, just figure it out, it's going to end up in a breakdown. That trust, that faith, that confidence in your leader needs to be there. Yeah. So as a service manager, if you're going to expect your team to use these components and these tools that they have available to increase their efficiency, you got to know them better than they do. You've got to become a student. You've got to be the first one there on training day and say, folks, teach me. I'm a sponge. I want to know this thing inside and out, so that when my team has a challenge or a difficulty or they resist it, I can be the first one to walk them through it and get them familiar with it. Because if I don't know it and they just stop using it, I can't coach them. I can't get them better. I can't overcome their challenges with it. So then it becomes a breakdown. And then 3 months later, hey, cancel this thing because we're not getting our money out of it. Well,
right. And that's the other thing when you look at it from the ownership perspective, the way you say that, right? The 20 groups, Mike. I've never been a big fan of 20 groups because I think what they do is they kind of give people the weird idea that everything can run as the perfect guy of that group. And everyone wants to emulate that. Or God forbid, someone comes in to like present a 20 group and they just tear people apart for an hour. And then then your dealership thinks everything's broken. And then they come back and they're pissed off at everybody. How many times do you deal with a concept that comes from ownership and then is put on service? Like, is that what this is? Is that so people are getting excited about what you're speaking about, right? Because you deal with the decision makers of groups and they get excited and then they just take it, and it isn't a discussion. It's this is your next part to deal with. Is that right?
That'll typically happen after, well, back in the old days before pandemic, after your conventions and conferences, after your digital dealer, after your NADA ownership, stop by a booth, got a demo, gets all excited, says, man, this will be great at our store. Goes back, tells the service manager, we're doing this. There's
Yeah.
no discussion, there's no choice, there's no nothing. When
Never
I'm in the
works.
store and I'm recommending things and I'm massaging that and I'm selling with value, this is how you're going to benefit, talking to the techs, it's a completely different sale. But yeah, when a GM comes back from a conference or a 20 group, hey, there's a guy in my 20 group meeting that's doing this, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
force something, you get a lot of resistance.
Forcing never works. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have buy-in, don't waste your time, because all you're going to end up doing is putting yourself through the rigmarole of signing up a product, which isn't that easy anymore. There's so many different pieces and parts that go into it. I mean, think about it for the video side, right? I mean, we got different cell phone numbers, we got different tracking, we got different. I mean, everyone's got to have their own user ID. Everyone's got to have the communication flow, know how to use the video aspect. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. Everyone has to buy into it, and I think that's why the same thing applies to the front half of the store, Mike. I think that's why video doesn't get used a bunch in the front half, is because people don't get it. They don't buy into it. And even if it's not video, it can be text. Like, just stop trying to force things on people and just see what they want. Ask them how they want to do things. Maybe you have a customer in your drive where you say, hey, we got the phone or text option. Which do you prefer? He says phone. Okay, circle phone and call the guy. But I mean, I'm telling you, I think probably 7 out of 10 people are going to select text. I mean, is that what you've seen in your experience?
That's exactly what I've seen. And back in, I want to say 2014, when I was a sales manager at a Ford store, I came across a company called Zipwhip. And at the time, Zipwhip's claim to fame was they could take your store's local number and convert it into a text number. Before a lot of CRMs had texting capability, the reason that appealed to me was my internet guys could be texting customers with the store's number, not their cell number, because then I couldn't see that conversation. It was outside of the CRM. I wanted to make sure it was all, liabilities and stuff. I wanted to see those conversations. But also for transparency, if the customer hit the number to dial it back, it would go to the store. So it was legitimate. It was a great system. After about 3 months of using it with my BDC and my internet guys, I went out to the service advisors and I said, hey guys, this is something that we're using up front. This could probably help you out. And I'm not saying I invented the wheel, because there were companies doing texting at the time. I just happened to think of the service department, which a lot of people weren't doing at the time. And I had 2 service advisors that I was really good friends with that started asking people, folks, would you like a text message or would you like me to call you? And almost every single one said, well, just text me. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to send you a text right now. It's going to have the opt-in, just hit yes, reply to it. And that way I can text you information on your car. The cumbersome part back then was it was a separate,
well, it wasn't integrated into DMS. It wasn't integrated to CRM, depending on where you did your business.
But it was those guys that were using it were still finding the increase in efficiency, even though it was a separate website. They just kept it open on a different tab, and they'd go back and forth and text with customers. So if you give the customer the choice, say, hey, how would you like us to communicate with you? And then stay on that, you're already in. I mean, you're golden.
And you just talked about it, right? So you and I earlier today, we communicated via LinkedIn text. That's what we did. That is all that these systems were for these guys. They were just a different instant message platform, different than their cell phone. Honestly, I think it was good to separate the two, especially when you were able to work it from a desktop, because the concept was, you know what I mean? It was kind of mind-boggling. We were like, I'm dialing into this desktop tool a text. Like, this is so weird. But when those things work together, and depending, it doesn't matter, even if it was from the phone or from a desktop, my point is you get that engagement. You get that next level of discussion. You know the customer is going to read it. You know the customer is going to reply to it. And like you said, I like the paper trail. It's like in 2000, what was it, 2004, 2005, when I was in finance. Yes, the worst 9 months of my life, but I was there.
Worst 3 years of my life. I'm right there with you.
3 years. Jeez, you are a champion, my friend. Never. 9 months, but it was during the fad of recording all the conversations in the finance office. And so I'd have to go through my rigmarole, sit down. Okay, folks, just so you know, you're being recorded. But you had never had a more powerful tool, man. When a customer said I said something in the finance office, I did not say it. Because all you would ever have to say is, folks, no problem. I'll pull your deal jacket. We'll pull the video and we'll review the tape. We'll get back to you. Oh, well, I may have not. Well, in the back pedal and right out the fucking door, bud. And it ain't coming back because the reality is it's there already. It's already there. I live in Wisconsin, which is a one-party state, single-party state. So I record all my incoming phone calls, all my phone calls, just because I do a lot of different business and it's just important to have. It's come up more than once and saved me in lawsuits, in fucking headaches, in he said, she said debates. And now you can download these things and just send them as files to people like, hey, oh, I did? Here, re-listen to that. And it's just, it's so powerful because you can no longer say, well, maybe, or I think. No. You texted me yes to this approval. You said right here you approve doing this work. You can't say to me, that's why I love a paper trail, dude. I'm all about it.
It just protects everyone, even the consumers.
It does, because we are also consumers, right? When you take your car into service, you are a service consumer. I don't care if you know the dealership inside and out and you used to work there. You are still a service consumer. I go to a dealership that I go to the dealership for my Subaru because they have a master tech. That's a big thing for me. I seek them out. I look at their records. It's important to me to have my car taken care of. That's why I've had it as long as I have, right? But they're not a client of mine, so they don't give a shit about me. They don't. When I walk in with my wife's Mercedes, that's my client. So I get a little bit different hello, thank you, maybe than the most, whatever, fine. But that Subaru store, I'm just another Joe who fits into the process, but all they do is text. It's the first thing they tell you now. Oh, no, you need just text us. But Mike, you know what else happens on the consumer side with text? I got a high level of expectation now that we're texting. So when you don't deliver, when you tell me I'm going to get an update on my car in 1 hour and it's 3 hours and I've texted you twice in 3 hours and you've said nothing to me, now we've got a fucking problem, right, Mike?
Right. Once you set that expectation, if you don't deliver, it's actually worse than not having set the expectation.
So Mike, how do we set reasonable expectations and how do we overcome them when we do not deliver on them? Because I know you've done both.
It comes down to under promising, over delivering. Always. When I was working in service, I used to tell the service advisors, don't tell the customer that you're going to get back to them at 3 o'clock. If you know you're not going to get back to them at 3 o'clock, well, it avoids a confrontation because customers don't want to hear bad news. Actually, customers would rather the truth. If you tell them, I'm going to need this car till tomorrow, they may go, oh, shit. All right, let's just go ahead and do it. But if you say, I might be able to have it done today, their expectation is it's going to be done today. If you already know you're going to call them back and say, oh, I'm going to need it till tomorrow, now you've just made it double worse for yourself. And there seems to be this human nature to try to avoid confrontation, but a lot of it is created in our own head. We just assume the customer's going to be pissed off when they hear this, so we don't tell them up front.
Yeah, we create the animosity because do you know what happens when they make that call, Mike? Because you've heard it, right? It's this like, yeah, hi, Mr. Jones. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able. And what the fuck, man? Have some confidence. Pick the phone up. Tell Mr. Jones, your car has a little bit more of an issue than I thought. I'm going to need it till tomorrow, but for your safety and ours, I think it's the best route for you to take. Does tomorrow work for you to pick the car up? If not, potentially we could get you a loaner. That would be the conversation to have, but it doesn't go that way, Mike. Right. There's a lack of confidence because you just said it. Man, you just said it. We convince ourselves that what I'm about to say is gonna ruin the other person's day, and they're not gonna want to ever speak to me again, and this is gonna be the worst thing to happen. Most of it's in your head.
Yeah.
Most of it's in your head. I like it, Mike. Good job, buddy. I like that. That's a great piece of advice is get out of your own way. Just because you think you might be aggravated by what you're about to tell someone that's your shit. Don't do that. Take it inside and say, this is the story, Mr. Jones. The car is this. The time is this. The time frame could be as long as this. We do it on the front half. Right, Mike? You can afford $340 up to as much as. Just apply it to the time of a car. These guys told me for my car, hey, Sean, could be 2 weeks, man. Could be 2 weeks. We got parts. We got heads. We got gases. We got tech time. Could be 2 weeks. Okay, no problem. You know what I mean? You guys got a loaner for me? Yeah, I got a loaner for you. Here you go. Great. See you later. No problem. Call me in 8 days. It's a win. I didn't even think twice about it. I didn't, you know what I mean? The bills, whatever. It doesn't.
Right. You're like, score.
Yeah, because it doesn't, people are like, oh, how am I going to explain the bill? Customers are not that dumb.
Right.
I knew when I brought you my car based on how it was running, I was in for a serious effing problem. Not to mention my Subaru, when the real problem hits, it shuts off the cruise control and lights up the whole dash like a Christmas tree. I know that because it's only happened one other time. So I knew when that happened to me, I knew I was screwed. I have no problem with that. Not to mention, I have a commitment to the car. I've had it for as long as I have. I bring it in. It's been paid for almost since it was my car. So it's not like I have a payment against it, right? And people will say, Sean, how could you put $4,000 into a car that old? What? How could I not? The car's done nothing wrong. In 11 years, it's done nothing. 12 years, done
At
nothing
that over
wrong.
11 years, it's really not that expensive.
Thank you, right? So that's what I'm asking people to do. And what does it matter? You don't know my financial situation. You don't. So don't assume that you do when you call. Just because I bring in an '07 Subaru doesn't mean I'm some tree hugging hippie who lives off the land. That's just not the case. So you don't have to worry about the number. Just it's the number.
Right.
It's like when people ask you to sign for the receipt after the work's done, after you give them your credit card, and they're like, "Oh, please sign this." Like, well, and if I said no, and if I just right now I'm like, "No, I'm not signing this. I won't do this." What the fuck's gonna happen? What are you gonna say to me? Well, I'm gonna take your car back apart. Like it's just we worry so much about people's own reactions to something that we're not even sure we can deliver.
Right.
It's crazy.
Make it as easy as possible to be our customer. Deliver the news the way it needs to be delivered.
Mike, it's easy to say though, isn't it? I hear it all the time. Oh, we love customers. We're customer this, we're customer that. Really? Have you checked out your Google reviews? I mean, have you? I know you're a GMB guy, so I don't have to tell you about the power of GMB. I know Mike the car guy lives the GMB life. But it's separation of what's really going on versus that. Mike, I want to ask you about one last thing before we go because I'm going to put this. I've been getting frustrated about it. The Vroom commercial. Have you seen this during the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's a 28-second commercial, right? Of silliness. It's dumb. It is what it is. Is it worth all this outrage, Mike? Am I missing something? I just feel like even I've given this too much attention, even bringing it up now. But I'm bringing it up now because I was on a call yesterday with a website company who's been sort of leading the charge against Vroom. I still don't know why we do this, but we're leading the charge against Vroom on behalf of all the dealers. So they start the conversation. Their monthly call, they start off with, well, here's how we're going to react to the Vroom for your website. And I thought to myself, how the fuck are these connected? Like, how did we get here? Mike, what do you think about the Vroom commercial? And is it sure, it's weird. It's kind of cringy. Sure. But is it worth all of these dramatics? Just what it feels like.
Not a bit. And the thing is, a couple things. First, we got to remember we did this to ourselves.
Oh, you can almost stop there and drop your mic, buddy, because that's the point. They wouldn't have this fodder if we didn't produce it for them.
It's 2021, and yet I still have people that will tell me, oh man, I had the worst experience trying to buy this Ram pickup or this. People call me because they know I spent 35 years in business. So, hey, where should I go for this vehicle? And sometimes because people change dealerships and such, I may not know someone that sells, a particular brand of Volvo. I don't have a guy at a Volvo store I can send you to, man. I wish you the best. And then I hear back, oh, geez, man, it was the worst experience. There are still people getting treated badly out there. So those commercials aren't going to go away. But that's not the first time someone's done that. Didn't you remember a few years ago, Edmunds had a really bad commercial and all the big players in the car business, all the gurus out there, the trainers and stuff, made a big stink about it. And then Edmunds pulled it and said that probably wasn't the most sensitive commercial. Come on, get over ourselves. Jesus Christ. There's a reason people still have that perception. And you can't blame a business for trying to market that and manipulate that and take advantage. That's what business is, right? Find a way to make money on something and go to it. I don't blame them. I thought it was silly, but I didn't get offended by it.
It's silly, but again, it's in no way is it worth this. Is it worth some crusade against Vroom? Is it worth changing our approach? The whole idea was buy local. Like, guys, what are you talking about? Like, anyone who knows anything about a car dealer knows it's already local. It's already one of the biggest parts of its local community and has been for as long as it's been standing.
Generates more in sales tax than anything else.
Ever. And it's part of the communities. It donates, it does the kids leagues, it does the this, it does the that. So please don't tell me to tell my clients that they should start thinking about how to sell the message of buying local. No, sell the message of ease of access. Sell the message of on your phone, on your computer, call us, text us. We don't give a shit. We are going to meet you where you want to be met and sell you a car. Why don't you start making ads that talk about robots being stupid ways to buy cars and humans being cool ways to buy cars? Why don't you go, they made it free game now. That should be the message. Hey, look, they stepped over the line. Let's go. Let's all step over the line. Then go do that shit. But sit here and tell people to change their approach or crusade against a 30-second spot sounds like a bunch of nonsense, Mike.
We want to make those commercials obsolete. We got to change our industry.
That's it. That's it.
We got to become a better place.
Everything Vroom can do, but with people in service departments. That's the reality.
Yeah.
You might not have a flatbed truck, but don't worry. Mike, didn't you just post something about the consumer blended idea here of where they actually still want to come into the store? They want this hybrid of doing everything they can before they get there and then still showing up. Didn't I see a post with you with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the latest Google dealer handbook, they're saying that 74% of people made up their mind online about the car they want and the dealership they want to buy from without engaging with that dealership. In other words, they didn't submit a lead or call the store. They just showed up there and they were already decided. So the deal was already pretty much done. It was the dealers to lose.
Yep. And that's, I'll tell you what, we'll full circle this whole thing. My friend Dave and his lady Kelsey, they tried to buy a Subaru, pretty much cash deal, pretty much easy. 5 hours, Mike. 5 hours in the middle of a pandemic with a child at a dealership. Now, they didn't have their child. My point is they were away from their child, making it even more excruciating that you were sitting there spending this kind of time dealing with this sort of nonsense. So again, I ask us as an industry, before we worry about everyone else, worry about yourself.
Right.
Make sure that you yourself are following everything you can do to make the best customer experience possible. Mike, anything you had to say to finish us up here, buddy?
I appreciate your time, man. It went by fast. It's 45 minutes. It feels like we were just 5, maybe 10.
Yeah, so, hey, that's what the show's all about, buddy. 5, maybe 10. Mike, dude, thanks so much for coming on. You are a great guest with tons of knowledge. Your time in the business is crucial to the success of others. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and time with us. We really do appreciate it. Mike, where can folks find you to follow you and do more of what you do?
Google Mike the Carguy. You'll come up with any one of a dozen ways to find me. Whatever you like, I'm there. Whether you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, find me.
Look at this guy. He is not only telling you the message of connecting with your consumer wherever they want, but he's offering it to you to connect with him wherever you want. Mike, right. You are the best, man. Thank you so much for being on. And thank all of you for watching. We all appreciate it. Don't forget to tune in next week. We are going to keep the dealers rolling. Thank you guys so much and have a wonderful week.